Hey everyone! In this video, we'll design a clean hover animation in Figma, perfect for product showcases and similar layouts. Let's jump straight in. So, what do we need for this design? We'll need these bright backgrounds, cans, set of ingredients for each product, and text. I'd really recommend always preparing your assets before you start designing. It saves a lot of time later. Alright, let's move on to creating our frame. You can choose any screen size you want. I'm going with a MacBook Pro 16. Let's move it here for convenience. Now we need to create frames for our cans. First, we define their size. They should fill the entire screen. So we do it this way. All frames have the same size. So you just create 4 frames, select, and stretch them. That way, you immediately know the dimensions, and you don't have to change anything later while working on the design. And now we clearly understand the exact frame size we need. So copy this frame and move it here. Let's zoom in for convenience. In Fill, we choose a radial gradient and select our colors. As you can see, we get the circular gradient, so we stretch it like this to create a smoother color transition. Alright, our first frame is ready. This will be our hover state. We duplicate it. And for the second frame, we simply change the background color. Rename the frames to default and hover. Next, we move on to the cans. We copy our can and place it into the hover frame. Then we select rectangle, go to Fill, choose Image, and upload our image. This way, you can immediately see the actual size of your elements inside the design. Now let's add a layer blur effect. It usually looks much more interesting when you apply it to certain elements. It adds more depth to the design. Layer blur works especially well when you combine larger elements with smaller details. Now we copy this element, move it up, resize it, and remove layer blur. We copy it once more, move this one down, and replace it with another image. Let's also rotate it 90 degrees, or any angle that feels visually interesting to you. We'll rotate this one as well to make the composition feel more dynamic. So this is the final hover state. Let's rename all of our ingredient layers. It's just more convenient. I personally like keeping things organized, and I definitely recommend doing the same. Next, we take our first text block and copy it into the frame. What's inside this text block? We have a number, then 2 text elements, a title and a description, both inside an auto layout. And we also have a button. The entire text block is built using auto layout. I highly recommend using it. Now we select both frames and align them to the center. Then we group them in a frame, and now we have a single one. We name it default, we move it here for convenience, duplicate it, and name the copy hover. Let's move it slightly lower so we have some working space. Here's what we do next. We move the text block outside of the frame. It's still inside the frame structurally, but it's outside the visible area. Just make sure it doesn't leave the default frame completely. Now we select the default frame and resize it down to 1 pixel. We already have the hover state, but for the animation to work, we need to adjust the default state as well. We need to adjust the element position so they animate on hover, so I make the default frame invisible for now. And now we're working with the internal hover layout. We need to shift these elements so they animate into place on hover. Here you can move them however you like. The main thing is everything must stay inside the main frame, but outside the visible area. We rotate our ingredients and move them beyond the frame boundaries. Just make sure everything stays within the frame structure. So what do we do next? We make the default frame visible again, then we go to prototype. We select the default frame, connect it to the hover frame, and choose while hovering. For the animation, we select the easing we want. In my case, I'm using ease in and out with a duration of 800 milliseconds. Now we select both of our main frames. We go to Design, click Create Multiple Components, and then Combine as Variants. If you're working with repeating elements, components make things much easier. That way, you don't need to recreate this 4 times. You build it once and then simply replace the content inside. Now let's temporarily remove this frame and move everything a bit closer to the text so it's easier to duplicate and edit. By the way, regarding text content, I highly recommend preparing it in advance as well. This saves a huge amount of time. You immediately see how your text and colors look inside the design. So again, prepare all your elements up front whenever possible. Here we change the number to 2, update the color. We copy the title and the description. Now here's an important part. We also need to update the internal hover state. To do that, we make the internal default invisible. Then we select the hover frame and disable clip content. This lets us clearly see which elements are positioned outside the visible area of the frame. First, we change the background color. Then we replace the cans and update all the elements to match the second product. Now, once that's done, we select the hover frame again and make sure clip content is enabled. This step is very important. Then we make the default state visible again. Now we duplicate the component and repeat the exact same steps we used for the previous hover frame. We update the text, make default invisible, disable clip content, and replace all the internal content. Always follow a clear order. This makes it much easier to avoid mistakes. My personal order is: first, change the background; second, change the cans; third, update the ingredients; and finally, return everything to its original visibility state. This really helps because Figma loves consistency. If you forget a step or if something goes outside the frame, your animation will break. And very often, people don't even understand why something is not working as it should. They think everything is set up correctly, but the animation still doesn't work. So always pay attention to consistency. It's extremely important in Figma. Now we select our MacBook Pro 16 frame, or whichever screen you chose. We take all of our components, set the spacing between them to 0, and place them directly into the main frame. And as you can see, everything falls perfectly into place. Now we hit present and see it in action. Nothing breaks, and the animation works exactly as expected. And with a bit of experimentation, you can get even better results. So, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next lesson.